We are back, Jack. Alright, we get some stuff sorted. I got all my Bibles spread out. I know it's been a minute since we were in Revelation, but we are returning. I will probably reread chapter 11 in a speed read fashion because I know we talked about some things and I will try to keep it at a minimum. We did not finish the chapter though, however, so we're going to go back and revisit that. While Matt's getting some of my information printed off, we'll go ahead and do our proclamations. I am born of love.
I am born of love.
I walk in love.
I walk in love.
The joy of the Lord is my strength.
The joy of the Lord is my strength.
I have the peace of Jesus,
I have the peace of Jesus,
which passes all understanding.
which passes all understanding.
I am long suffering,
I am long suffering,
and patience has her perfect work in my life.
and patience has her perfect work in my life.
I am perfect and entire, wanting nothing.
I am perfect and entire, wanting nothing.
I am gentle and kind.
I am gentle and kind.
God's goodness is working in me.
God's goodness is working in me.
I am faithful and can be depended upon.
I am faithful and can be depended upon.
I am meek and have humbled myself to the Word of God.
I am meek and have humbled myself to the Word of God.
Its authority is first place in my life.
Its authority is first place in my life.
I am temperate in all things.
I am temperate in all things.
His grace gives me self-control.
His grace gives me self-control.
The greater one who lives in me
The greater one who lives in me
has control of me
has control of me
because I walk in love,
because I walk in love
and I am His to command.
and I am His to command.
Ready. Okay. At the risk of sounding a little redundant, I know I've told Mama this and Matt this and Brother Andy this. The more I read the book of Revelation, the more I am convinced, or I don't know, just persuaded, let's go with that, persuaded that most of this is God showing John the same thing, just in different pictures. You know, just like when Pharaoh had his dream, and he dreamed of the corn stalks, the 7 good fat ones and the 7 scrawny ones, and then he dreamed of the 7 fat cows and the 7 skinny cows. Well, was that 2 different visions? But they meant the same thing. It was still talking about the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of lack. 2 different pictures to represent the same thing. And you know, I grew up with the teaching that, you know, we have this literal 7-year period of tribulation. You have 3.5 years that'll be a little bit milder, and then you have 3.5 years that's going to be more intense. And I'm just seeing more and more and more that it may not be quite so cut and dry. We've got to understand again that the things that John saw was a vision. And in a vision, most of the time, every once in a while a vision is literal, but most of the time in a vision, things represent other things. And so I think we have claimed things as literal that may not necessarily be such. That's just me. Now you might disagree, and that's fine. Like I said, you know, we're not going to know for sure till it's already passed. So at this point, everybody's speculating. We're all having study group. Okay, so don't think that somebody has got it nailed down 100% faux show. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, as I'm reading over and over and over and over and over, and seeing the world that we're in today, and looking at past things that I've never thought to look at before, I'm seeing things from a different perspective. And so that's been interesting to me. So we're going to back it up and start reading chapter 11. I'm probably going to be in the Amplified because it's just more fun. Alright. Then there was given to me a measuring rod like a staff, and someone said, "Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar of incense, and count those who worship in it. But leave out the court of the Gentiles, which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles, the nations, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months, 3½ years." Court of the Gentiles. Again, this was a political move. It was created so that we could kind of let the Gentiles do their little thing too and feel included. Okay? Does this mean that there's going to be a literal rebuilding of the temple? Possibly. Or is this saying, go out and measure my true church and leave off the ones that are playing part-time Christian? Just a thought. Just a thought. Okay. And I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, 42 months, 3½ years, dressed in sackcloth. These witnesses are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands which stand before the Lord of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire comes out of their mouths and devours their enemies. So if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this way. These 2 witnesses have the power from God to shut up the sky so that no rain will fall during the days of their prophesying regarding judgment and salvation. And they have power over the waters, seas, rivers, to turn them into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they wish. Again, we talked about last time, I know it's been a minute, I've always been taught that these are 2 literal people. These will be Elijah, most likely Elijah and Enoch, that will be in Jerusalem. Is that how it is, or is this a picture of the church? Is this a picture of the church? The church, as it witnesses and breathes fire, and it hurts the people that don't want to be part of it. The witness was not something that everybody liked. Think of the early persecution.
Why would it say 2 witnesses?
2 witnesses?
If it's regarding the church, I'm just asking.
The Jewish believer and the Gentile believer. The 2 witnesses. Some say it's the 2 covenants. However, you're not going to be able to destroy or kill the word. So I don't think it's saying, I don't believe that it's the word. I've read one commentary that said it was the 2 testaments of the word. I don't believe it's that. I believe the more I read into it, I'm almost convinced. Again, it's hindsight's 20/20, is that it's the Jewish believer and the Gentile believer, the true church. Just going through the days of persecution and things like that. They'll be given power for this 7-year period.
But legalistically, the word said there has to be 2 or more witnesses. I mean, from a legal standpoint, for it to work.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Absolutely. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let the truth be established. That is exactly right. So when they finished their testimony and given their evidence, the beast that comes up out of the abyss, or the bottomless pit, will wage war with them and overcome them and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie exposed in the open street of the great city Jerusalem, which in a spiritual sense is called by the symbolic and allegorical names of Sodom and Egypt, where also the Lord was crucified. Those from the peoples and tribes and languages and nations look at their dead bodies for 3½ days and will not allow their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb. I think of the world that we live in. I think of the time of the church now. How long has the church just rolled over and took whatever the devil or the world has said? The church has been a living corpse for a very long time. You see it. You see the compromise. You see that the church has not been done away with, but most people see the church as a joke. Oh, they're just like us anyway. It's been a corpse laid in the street for far too long, and now We're going to find out. Let's just keep going a little bit. And those non-believers who live on the earth will gloat over them and rejoice, and they will send gifts and celebration to one another because these two prophets tormented and troubled those who live on the earth. The early church rocked the boat. Think of the great revivals. Think of the spiritual, the leaders, the men and women of God who stood up for their beliefs, who stood up for the standard of God, and they were the thorn in the side of the devil. What's happened to those leaders? What's happened to those men and women who would open their mouths and let fire come out? Who when Satan would use people to rise up against them, the Lord would fight those battles and stop things. I've seen it. I've seen it. There was a time when people had enough fear and respect to say, you don't say that to a man of God. You don't act that way around a man of God. There was a time. But now, oh, you're a Christian? Well, I'm going to be more blatant. I'm going to be more, and don't you dare say something against me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have freedom of speech, but you don't. But after 3.5 days, the breath of life from God came into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear and panic fell on those who were watching them. And the two witnesses heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." Then they ascended into heaven in the cloud, and their enemies watched them. What does that sound like?
The rapture.
Don't that sound like the rapture of the church?
Mm-hmm.
Woo! When she wakes back up. When those men and women of God start standing up. When we start steaming those wrinkles. Come on up. And it's going to strike terror into the world. That's just my take on reading this after the things that I have read about, because
Makes good sense to me.
these days in Scripture, remember, this is a vision. This is a vision. Is it literal days, or do days represent a larger number, a larger span of time? Let's see. And in that very hour, there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell and was destroyed. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the rest who survived were overcome with terror. Now, in the King James, it says the remnant. The remnant. That's going to be the second chance for the Jews. The remnant is what's left after the rapture. Those Jews who have worshiped God but have not come into the knowledge of Christ. They'll come into the time, because this would be the end of the age of the Gentiles. Right? And restarting the second chance of the Jew. And they glorified the God of heaven as they recognized His awesome power. Yeah, that's probably going to register in a lot of their minds. You know? The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Then the seventh angel sounded the trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, "The kingdom, dominion, rule of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of His Christ, and He will reign forever and ever." And the 24 elders who sit on their thrones before God fell face downward and worshiped God, saying, "To you we give thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the omnipotent, the ruler of all, who are and who were, because you have taken your great power and the sovereignty, which is rightly yours, and have now begun to reign." And the nations, Gentiles, became enraged and your wrath and indignation came, and the time came for the dead to be judged, and the time came to reward your bondservants, the prophets and the saints, God's people, and those who fear your name, the small and the great, and the time came to destroy the destroyers of the earth. And the temple of God, which is in heaven, was opened, and the ark of his covenant appeared in his temple, and there were flashes of lightning, loud rumblings and peals of thunder, and an earthquake, and a great hailstorm. Then we move on to chapter 12. And I've read an interesting commentary because I've only thought of chapter 12 in one light on the life, and it's given another light that is an interesting thought. So, I've always thought that here we go, God exists out of time. So John was seeing these things. We're going to backtrack a little bit in chapter 12 and see the first coming of Christ up through more modern times. But there was another thought on this as well, which I will share as we get there. And a great sign, warning of an ominous and frightening future event, appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. Now traditionally we think of this as Mary, because the woman is going to be travailing in labor, and the dragon seeks to devour her child. I read a commentary that proposes this is the bride of Christ. This is the bride of Christ, or the church. She's clothed in the sun, the heavenlies, God's glory. And the moon is beneath her feet, the moon being a representation of the earth, showing that she is in this world but not of it. She's above it. She's different. 12 stars representing the good news carried by the 12 apostles. So that's one other view. She was with child, the Messiah, and she cried out, being in labor and in pain to give birth. Then another sign of warning was seen in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, Satan, with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 royal crowns or diadems. Now, the way Rome was set up, there was literally 7 hills in Rome wherein government and ruling happened. So, most of your commentaries, most of them are going to tell you that Rome, and by extension, Roman Catholicism, is Antichrist. And I know I'm probably going to hit some brake dust on people because just about everybody knows somebody who's Catholic. I'm sorry, it's in your history. It is there.
I'm with you.
It goes further down. I mean, let's see. This is some of the stuff Matt was working on while we switched over to Saturday worship, which is a whole thing in and of itself. But let's see. Okay, there's a little short history on the 10 horns, because here we have Satan with 10 horns. You see that in Daniel, you see that all over. So let's talk about these horns for a minute, okay? You go back to your history. The Roman Empire was split into 10 kingdoms, literally. That was the Franks, the Huns, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Heruli, the Lombards, the Anglo-Saxons, the Suevi, the Vandals, and the Burgundians. There you go. That's the 10 kingdoms that came from ancient Rome. Now, in Daniel, we find out that a small horn came up and uprooted 3 horns. Right? Well, let's see. I'm just going to read what Matt has here because it's good. So Daniel then sees a little horn come up out of the middle of the 10 horns. We recognize the horns as kingdoms. Then we can extrapolate, how we use big words, that the little horn is a small kingdom, right? Big horn's big kingdom, small horn, little kingdom. What could this small kingdom be? Because it is a church, most people may be unaware, but the Catholic Church or the Vatican is recognized as its own country, separate from Italy. It is its own kingdom. It is a government unto itself. The Catholic Church makes a good candidate for the little horn. The papacy had a hand in the destruction of 3 of the 10 kingdoms, mainly due to a disagreement in doctrine. Here's the kingdoms that were destroyed. The Heruli were destroyed in 493 AD at the command of the Roman Catholic Church. They didn't want to play ball. The Vandals were destroyed in 431 AD, again, at the discretion of the Roman Catholic Church. The Ostrogoths were destroyed in 554 AD, again, because of the Roman Catholic Church. So, there's a lot of imagery here. You want to go further down the rabbit trail, we can on that one. All you got to do is some Google searching, okay? It's not hard to find. It's not hard to find. But it also makes an interesting thought, because it's a counterfeit of what God has set up. You know? Counterfeit it. But anywho, let's go back to the dragon wanting to eat the baby. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who is destined to rule or shepherd all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was called up to God and to his throne. This could very well be referring to the first coming of Christ. Herod was waiting to kill the baby. Satan was ready to devour Christ. He killed all the children in Bethlehem under 2 years of age, just to try to devour the Christ child, and he couldn't do it. The other idea of this is the birth of new believers, of the truth, because we're supposed to have fruit following us. And Satan is waiting to devour it. He's historically tried to snuff out the church. Ironically, it's not ironically, but if you go back again, what has been one of the big tools that he's used to try to snuff out God's people? The church. Anybody remember a little period of time called the Dark Ages? When you weren't even allowed to read a Bible at the discretion of the Roman Catholic Church. They didn't want the common people to read the Bible.
Yeah, that's why King James come up with his version.
There's a
So
long...
the common man could have it.
Yeah.
Only royalty, only upper echelons were allowed to have the word.
Who was it that killed William Tyndale? You know, they burned him at the stake
You know this wonderful book we
Upside down,
keep...
wasn't
because he was publishing the Bible.
This wonderful book that we keep referencing, The Pilgrim's Progress. John Bunyan spent 12 years in prison for teaching something other than what the Church of England or Catholic Church wanted. He taught the truth. So the dragon is constantly trying to devour the truth, trying to stop it from happening, but it always returns to God. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God so that she would be nourished there for 1,260 days, 42 months, or 3.5 years. We keep going to 3.5 years. We keep talking about this time period, this breakdown. Now, I don't remember the exact amount of years, but it is how long, like, it's over 1,000 years. It's an interesting time frame. That was the numbers I was hoping Matt would have for me, but he don't, and that's okay. Because this time period, from the starting of Christianity, the early church, to the fall or the arresting of the first pope, if you put these days into the proper amount of years biblically, it's right on it. The 3.5. Remember that? I mean, it is on it. It's eerie how on it is. The first loss of power. Now, during the time that was going on, yes, the church was in hiding. The church was persecuted from every angle. She was hiding in the wilderness, but God was nourishing her, keeping her. She wasn't killed.
Well, you know, I danced around that day when we were talking
Yeah.
about bringing this subject up about the Catholic Church.
It's here.
And, you know, you gotta think, if you go back into just our recent history,
Yeah.
let's go back to the 40s during World War II. What was the church's stance with the Nazis?
Oh, they snuck them out.
They were right there with them.
Yep.
They didn't,
Yeah,
you know.
they helped hide the.
They helped hide
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the
See, they were
Nazis,
all-
the Roman Catholic
they-
Church. Yeah.
They
So-
sure did.
You know, it's kind of one of those, you know, and what does the Pope equate to on here on earth? He equates to
The father.
the Father. He is the true representation of God on earth.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you think about that, and that's why I come up with what I was talking about today, is because the church, the Catholic Church's roots run deep in this world.
Oh yeah.
They got more money than most governments do.
Why do we eat fish on Fridays? Restaurants.
Yeah. You know,
It ain't just a
you know,
a restaurant thing. It's, oh wait, all the Catholics can't eat red meat on Friday.
right.
They eat fish on Friday.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do what they say there.
Mhm.
Why do we have church on Sundays?
Well, there you go.
God didn't change the Sabbath day. The
Mhm.
early church didn't change the Sabbath day. The Catholic Church
Yep.
changed the Sabbath day to establish their authority over God. Oh, Nelly.
Mhm.
And yeah, one of them's quoted as saying that. That's why they decided to keep it.
Yeah.
Nope. Nope.
There is.
To me, that is Danger Will Robinson. Big, big bad problems.
Too many things over this time
Yeah.
that church has done
Yeah.
that doesn't. I mean, it honestly points to.
Now, I want to take a moment. I think that there are people within that organization that don't know what they're a part of, and their heart is
And
to
they
the
love,
Lord.
and they love.
And their heart is to the Lord. I'm not saying that if you're a Catholic, you're going to hell.
No.
But I am saying you might want to dig into your roots and find out what your organization's all about. Okay? Now, I would challenge anybody to do that with any organization. Guess what? Just about all of them got a skeleton in their closet or two. You need to find out what were they doing wrong and if they've rectified it. How about that? Because I think we've all made mistakes.
Let's look at just another. I'm gonna say it. Let's just look at the molestation and how they handle that. Do they get rid of them? No, they just move them.
That's not the solution, but you know what? Sadly, I know that stuff like that goes on in Protestant churches as well.
It does.
You know,
It
that was
does.
tit for tat.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm just going back over the history, the time, the dates. If you have a lot of questions about that, a good jump start is From Babylon to America. You can watch the whole documentary on YouTube for free. But you're probably going to take a few nights to do it, because if you stop to really investigate all the information, it's like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, there's just so much information there. But that's kind of what tipped us on our rabbit trail. You know, won't forget, Daddy called me up and he said, hey, I want you to watch this. I want you to watch this. And I watched it. What'd you think? It's like, I think we need to be changing when we worshiping. He's like, you sure about that? He's like, can you look it up? I was like, yeah, I can look it up. Spent about 2 weeks of just nerding out on all the Google searches I could imagine. And I'm like, it ain't looking good for us here. And later I found out he told Matt, he said, I gave it to Mindy because I knew she wouldn't let it go till she got to an answer. She wouldn't let it go, and I didn't, bless Matt's heart. That's all he heard for probably a month because I fixated on it. I wanted to get to an answer here. And I'm still fully persuaded. I think God has blessed what we've been doing. I mean, it's nice. It feels like you have a longer rest on the weekend. I don't know if anybody else gets that feeling, but I do. It's very nice. Let's see. Let's keep on moving because this is good stuff. Y'all quiet, but it's good. Let's see. So she fled. Okay, and war broke out in heaven, verse 7. Michael, the archangel, and his angels waging war with the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought, but they were not strong enough and did not prevail, and there was no longer a place found for them in heaven. He got kicked out. And the great dragon was thrown down, the age-old serpent who is called the devil and Satan, he who continually deceives and seduces the entire inhabited world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. 10. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom, dominion, reign of our God, and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our believing brothers and sisters has been thrown down at last, he who accuses them and keeps bringing charges of sinful behavior against them before our God day and night. And if you want a reference to where Satan did that, you can go to Job 1, 6 through 11 and hear the account of Satan accusing Job.
Well, that just tells you right there that Satan's got free reign to the court.
Yeah.
Right
He's
now.
a lawyer.
Yeah.
He's a lawyer in the courts of heaven.
He ain't chained up down there in no pit down there right now. He's free reigning everywhere.
You know, this is kind of off the subject, but I was listening, if y'all were listening to Victory during the day, you know, Keith Moore has that faith school. I don't know if y'all seen today's, but he was talking in Matthew, hang on just a second, Matthew, I think it was chapter 12, but he was talking about Matthew chapter 12, verse 9, it says, now when he had departed from there, he went into their synagogue, and behold, there was a man who had a withered hand. And they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? That they might accuse him. And Keith Moore was saying they already knew in their heart that he was telling the truth, but they were still wanting to accuse him.
Yep.
And he was saying, don't ever be grouped in that category that you are an accuser of people. He said, do not do it. He said, because that is the devil's job, and you're aligning yourself with, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, you're aligning yourself with the accuser of the brethren, who is the devil.
Wow.
And I thought, whoa,
Mm.
Yep. Okay, I have, I'm in Matthew Henry's commentary if anybody wants to know. If you've got your blue letter Bible, good stuff, good stuff. This is also the commentary that, you know, I randomly read, and that got me on the thoughts of the witnesses. So he's presenting these interesting light things. But I've got it here for toward the end of the chapter because there was some good stuff in here about the water. So here we go. And they overcame and conquered him, Satan, because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony. For they did not love their life and renounce their faith even when faced with death. Even when faced with death, they held on. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them, in the presence of God. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you in great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time remaining.
Ain't that comforting?
Yes, yes it is. Yes it is. Absolutely. Let's see, where am I at? Okay. And when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the two wings of the great eagle were given to the woman, so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place, where she was nourished for a time and times and half a time, 3½ years, away from the presence of the serpent. And the serpent hurled water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that he might cause her to be swept away with the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river which the dragon had hurled out of his mouth. So the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went off to wage war on the rest of her children, seed, those who keep and obey the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus, holding firmly to it and bearing witness to him. Let's see. Here we go. His second attempt upon the church now in the wilderness, he persecuted the woman who brought forth the man-child. Here we go. This is Matthew Henry's commentary, because it was good. The care that God had taken of his church. He had conveyed her as on eagle's wings into a place of safety provided for her, where she was to continue for a certain space of time, couched in prophetic characters that's taken from Daniel 7:25. The continual malice of the dragon against the church. Her obscurity could not altogether protect her. The old subtle serpent, which at first lurked in paradise, now follows the church into the wilderness and casts out a flood of water after her to carry her away. Mama,
What?
I gotta take a phone call. I can't not. Can somebody come pick up or finish reading Matthew Henry?
Well, where's the Matthew Henry?
Yeah, Andy's pulling it up.
I'm gonna pull it up right now.
Okay. Andy, just talk loud.
Yeah, well, I'll pull her.
Okay.
Let me find out where she was at. And actually, I gotta find Matthew Henry.
Is it up here?
It's on the blue letter Bible.
She's got it on her
Let's
phone.
see. Oh, shoot. Matthew Henry. Here we go. 12. We were down to 12, weren't we?
Yeah.
Y'all be patient, be patient. Let me find exactly where we were at, and I will finish reading this. continual malice and drag. Let's see. Had she read this, the continual malice of the dragon against the church?
Just start right
You
there.
can start there.
Her
Even if you reread it,
obscurity,
that's okay.
yeah, could not altogether protect her. The old subtle serpent, which at first lurked in paradise, now follows the church into the wilderness and casts out a flood of water after her to carry her away. This is thought to have been meant of a flood of error and heresy, which was breathed by Arius, Nestorius, Pelicus, and many more, by which the Church of God was in danger of being overwhelmed and carried away. The Church of God is in more danger from heretics than from persecutors, and heresies are as certain from the devil as open force and violence. The seasonable help provided for the church in the dangerous juncture, the earth helped the woman and opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood. Some think we are to understand the swarms of Goths and Vandals that invaded the Roman Empire and found work for the Arian rulers, who otherwise would have been as furious prosecutors as the pagan had been, and had exercised great cruelties already. But God opened a breach of war, and the flood was in a manner swallowing up thereby, and the church enjoyed some respite. God often sends the sword to avenge the quarrel of his covenant. And when men choose new gods, then there is a danger of war in the gates. Intestine broils and contentions often end in the invasions of a common enemy. The devil, being thus defeated in the designs upon the universal church, now turns his rage against particular persons and places. His malice against the woman pushes him to make war with the remnant of her seed. Some think hereby are meant the Albigenses, or I don't know how you say that word, who were first by Diocletians driven up into barren and mountainous places, and afterwards cruelly murdered by populist rage and power for several generations, and for no other reason than because they kept the commandments of God and held the testimony of Jesus Christ. Their fidelity to God and Christ in doctrine, worship, and practice was which exposed them to the rage of Satan and his instruments. And such fidelity will expose men still, less or more, to the end of the world, when the last enemy shall be destroyed.
That's right.
I think of Sister Susan's post on the thread today
Yes.
about the closer that you get to God and walking the walk, the smaller your circle gets,
Yes.
because people don't like it. You know, the world does not like it, and they will shun you, and this is family, this is friends, this is
Everybody did that.
co-workers, this is, and it goes right along with this, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does.
But we should rejoice, because it means we doing something right.
Yeah.
Bigger a circle gets towards
Look here.
God, the smaller-
If everybody's your friend, there's a
Doing something
problem.
wrong.
There's a problem.
That's it.
There's a problem.
That's it. I
My
just,
circle's strong,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
considerably.
But what's that analogy? You can have a nickel and a dime. That dime's smaller, but it's worth more.
Mm-hmm,
You know, that
That's
smaller circle's worth more, y'all.
mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
They go to bat for you. But
Yeah,
I thought that was just interesting, the different things about how, God will use things, even in the world, to protect, His people, His church, to make provision. It made me think of, what I was talking about earlier in that book that I've been reading.
Well,
By J.R. Tolkien.
well, he used a raven
Yeah, to feed it.
to feed the prophet.
And that was an unclean beast. That was an unclean beast.
He'll do whatever
Yeah.
needs to be
That's
done.
right.
Mhm.
If we put our faith in him.
Yeah,
But, faith is something in these last days that we have got to be committed to.
yes.
Because I'm gonna tell you something, we have got to be at the point
That's
that
right.
it don't matter what it looks like.
That's it.
It don't matter the reports of the world that we get. We have got to go by, do we really believe the Word of God
That's it.
and what He says? If He says we're healed,
That's it.
are we gonna listen to a doctor contradict that? Which report are we gonna believe? Whose report you gonna believe?
Now, you can say, this is what the doctors say.
Yeah.
I don't claim that.
Yeah.
This is what they say is wrong with me. I say I'm healed.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
That's
it.
it. But you're right. I mean, as time goes on, and we can see it now in the way things are happening, that being for God, being a Christian is a bad thing. It's already ruling that the Bible is hate speech in Canada.
And of all the religions,
Yeah.
look at the only one that is being persecuted.
Mhm.
Of all the religions, everybody's fine with however you believe. You can even believe in the Satanic Bible and you're okay.
But if you're
But
Christian or
if you're
Jewish,
Christian,
But even at that, you gotta make the distinguishment. What level of Christian are you?
mhm,
Because there's certain churches that they endorse, because they accept sin and call it okay. They
Yeah.
accept they're kind of watered down, and I know that's not any odd thing there, because what did the dragon want to do? Wash her away?
mhm.
Just water it down just a little bit. Let's mingle some stuff in there. Let's slip some wrong teaching in. Let's anything that we can do to make her of no effect.
They don't want to offend.
Yeah.
They don't want to say the wrong thing that hurts people's feelings, that might make them leave and take their billfold with them.
Yeah.
And see, that's a big one right there in churches today. And I heard one yesterday. It was so good. So good. I was listening to Rick Renner. And he said, people say, yeah, they just after your money. Churches, all they want is your money. Said you listen to the preacher, man, that's all he's talking about is money. He said, so you go to a restaurant and you have a dinner, so what do? Hand you a check, they want your money.
Yeah.
You like bill, what do they want?
Your money.
You get a car, what do they want? Your money. Everything wants your money. So if you're going to pay for your groceries, you're going to pay for your food at the restaurant,
That's it.
why not pay your church
Yes.
for your spiritual food?
Amen.
yeah.
Amen.
It's
Yeah.
like to not pay your tithes
That's right.
is thievery, and it's like sniffing a check at a restaurant. If you think about it, I've never thought about it that way. But, I mean,
That is right.
what's
That's
being
all.
offered here
It's
is,
spiritual food.
is great too. It has value. Just
It
because a
does.
man stands up here and talks, you still got bills to pay in the church.
That's it.
They still, outreach programs.
That's right.
And, guys, I had a dream last night, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in there,
This
man,
is
'cause
great.
we're running close.
It's all right. Go for it.
I had a dream last night, and I'm gonna leave out some of it, because I don't think it really matters, but ended up, I came to church, and I was having a disagreement with someone, and Matt stepped into it. Now, when I was in this church wasn't small by no stretch of the imagination. I mean, the foyer area was just open, big, and it had stuff out there in it, like little planters, big planters built. It wasn't little; they were big
Stuff
planters.
Julie,
Yeah.
That was built
Decorate.
out in this foyer area.
That's it.
You could literally sit up on them if you wanted to. It was like little mini gardens. But anyway, it was beautiful. People were milling around. People were walking around. There was older couples, younger couples. The classrooms, the church was set up with chairs and like desks, and it was like a big screen in this class. And then you turn around, there was another class set up identical, facing the other way. Mindy was off someplace taking care of something. I don't know where she was at, but I know she was there. They said, oh, she's back. There were so many things going on at our church. This was our church.
That's right.
This wasn't a dream about just a church. No, it was our church. Matt was there, Mindy was there. I mean, there was people in these classes. These classes were almost full. I mean, there was hardly, just very little seating left. There was people, new people. I mean, there was young people. I'm like, this is great, And I mean, that was my dream last night. And I was like, I woke up this morning and I was like, I had to think about that thing for a while for it to digest. And then I told Mindy about it later, I'm like, dang about this dream.
That's right.
I said, this is great. I keep having these dreams about our church. And it's bigger now than what it was before. There's more going on than there was in the first dream that I was having. It's like my dreams are actually growing into showing us that what our vision is
That's right.
what we're gonna do is gonna
Woo.
bypass what we've got planned
We
right
gotta go
here.
bigger.
Yeah,
Let's go bigger.
this is just the beginning of what is to come for us
So excited.
in this, and I just believe that,
Yes.
these dreams that I'm having about our churches.
Yes.
well, I had a dream too the other night, Brother Andy, and I didn't understand it, and I actually spoke with Mindy about it, and she said, Mama, I believe our church is supposed to be helping people. She said, and that's what we're doing.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
That's right.
mhm.
I had a dream years ago about our church. It was a while, it wasn't recent, but it was bigger. It was like, I mean, it was like decked out looking.
Mhm.
Like, had to be something professional done over there. It
Yeah.
it wasn't no slap
Jimmy's
together
gonna
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Jimmy's home, Jimmy's home,
Jimmy's on the
Maybe not, maybe not. I'm just saying, it looked, there were chandeliers.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
You got ladders to dust with?
I'll never forget, y'all, and everybody knows that this building started out as mine and Matt's home,
Mhm.
the first home we bought together. We wasn't in this house very long at all, and I had a dream. And I dreamed that, okay, up above us is just an attic, but I dreamed that we had stairs, and we went up, and it was a dormitory with just beds and for people, just all the way down. And I said, man, that is weird. What are we supposed to do there, And I think about all these things, all the lives that will be touched, that are being touched right now through this ministry, through Facebook, through YouTube, but also in the things that we do, because we don't just, offer you a scripture and a prayer. We're a church that will get in there and assess what's going on and step in any way that we can, which is what we're called to do.
Yeah.
We're called to use our talents for the kingdom. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
good
I
thing.
guess that's all for tonight. Facebook, YouTube, guys, until Saturday morning,
Here from
we'll
Pastor
see
Ed.
you there.